everyone. Thanks for being with me. Tony Tonkin here for the Tony Tonkin Show. Great news has come out of the federal government about bloody time. Bit over hearing about interest rates and inflation and a whole lot of other shit that seems to concern most of us, particularly politicians, and particularly those who want to criticise them. However, something good has happened and we need to celebrate it. It appears that the federal government have decided to fall in line with Victoria and some other states in relation to banning any Nazi symbolism and banning Nazis expressing their hate for everything that is non-Nazi. And so I'm excited about this because I think it's about time we made a stand about or against anything that breeds hatred and fear of others. And there's no doubting for a moment that what the Nazis do, what the anti-Semites do, what those people that hate minorities do, is that they spread hatred and fear in our community, and we need to do whatever we could to stamp it out. I've been talking about this for a long, long time now, and it's good to see that the federal government have made a decision to ban anything that symbolises hate in this country. So hopefully they'll get rid of some of the cookers along the way. But I doubt whether that's likely to happen. But certainly the symbolism that sits around some of these organisations will now be dispensed with. And I'm pretty excited about that because this is no longer just about freedom of speech to be able to say whatever and do whatever you like. It's about the messages you give to others about minority groups or other people that is disseminating hate and fear of that particular group of people. That is wrong, simply wrong, and the government's made a stand against it. So I just got a clip here which is worth watching, just in relation to this particular issue and Dreyfus talking about what the government's doing, and then another bloke, an expert in this particular area, talking about what it all means. So it's worth listening to, worth noting. So I'll just play this for you, and we'll talk about it when we get to the other side.
Up to a year in prison. Attorney General Mark Dreyfus says the symbol has no place in Australia.
I'll be bringing a bill to the Parliament next week which will ban the public display of the Nazi Hakenkreuz and Schutzstaffel, that's the SS symbol, these two most prominent Nazi symbols, and importantly banning the trade in any items which bear these symbols. We're going to send a message that this spreading of hatred and violence and anti-Semitism has got no place in Australia. We need to send a message that there's no place in Australia for this kind of behaviour. There's no place in Australia for people that want to glorify the horrors of the Holocaust. It would have been unthinkable, Lisa, I think, going back a few decades.
Dr. Josh Roos is an expert on far-right and religious extremism at Deakin University. He says the ban is an important step in preventing far-right groups from spreading their message.
It's recognition at the federal level of the importance of the ban. It overlaps with state-based legislation. So the states, Victoria's led the way, and they've sought to ban not only the swastika, but its use in public space, so Nazi symbology effectively. And really what this does is it provides an extra layer, so you can't sell the material, or you can't sell memorabilia online or face-to-face. And it makes it a lot harder for some of those loopholes that Nazis might exploit to be utilised.
Are there enough protections for the religions like Hinduism, where the swastika is a symbol of significance?
Yeah, I would imagine that the federal government will be following the lead again of the states, and in particular Victoria, where there's been extensive community consultation about the use of the swastika and its various religious manifestations, and there are exemptions. This really only directly focuses upon the use of the swastika by white supremacists who are using it to attempt to recruit, to mobilise and to spread fear.
We talked a few weeks ago about far-right or ideological extremism, which makes up only 30% of ASIO's current terror caseload. But you were saying that these groups are actually quite clever at avoiding being listed as a terrorist organisation. It doesn't mean that these groups are inactive or that their activity is not on the rise. Is that correct?
That's correct. So these groups will employ a very violent rhetoric, and there's an implicit violence in what they're talking about. They will talk about their support for National Socialism. They'll talk about, they'll ask questions about the Holocaust. So they will run around the edges of debate, but they never come out directly and call for violence. And they're quite clever in that sense, because they know that that's the threshold at which action can be taken. But what this does is it actually prevents these groups using really violent symbology in public place. These are symbols that have a direct link to the horrors of the Holocaust and are really not only offensive but highly intimidatory for members of our community. So it prevents them from using that in public space.
Yeah, and that's in terms of flags, armbands and T-shirts. Do we know whether this applies to tattoos?
My understanding, based on the Victorian legislation, is that it doesn't actually relate to tattoos. That would obviously require all sorts of complications around people who may already have them. So my understanding is that they've actually avoided going down that path.
Can bans have the opposite effect of what's intended and actually draw people on the fringes into movements like Nazism?
Well, that's one argument, and there's also arguments, for example, that alternative symbols will be used. So people may be familiar with the OK symbol that's used by alt-right figures. It was used by the Christchurch terrorist Brenton Tarrant, for example, in the dock when he made that symbol, and that's one argument. However, again, those actual symbols don't have the same level of power and the same level of intimidatory violence that's embedded in the swastika, in its Nazi use, in the use of the Hitler salute, for example. So we know that these actions actually prevent them from using a really powerful tool in their arsenal to spread their message about what they stand for and who they are.
And I think, and I found that discussion quite helpful, and I think there are ways by which you could push similar legislation forward in relation to intimidation to other groups, such as the LGBTQI plus group, and the issues that surround the storytelling by trans people. And there are ways by which I think we could start to look at behaviours in particular that are intimidating a specific group and which disseminate misinformation at a rapid rate. So there's a way by which I think we could start, and maybe this is just the beginning. I mean, in this case, they're looking at the symbolism, the Nazism, the symbolism, the stuff that is about hatred for a specific group of people. So we know that that's the case. But also there's other things that are happening in our community by some extreme right-wing groups, which I think could also be focused in. So it's just the beginning of a charge towards dealing with and managing issues that are intimidating towards other people. I certainly hope so. I guess there'll become this big argument about freedom of speech and that people should be able to say and display whatever they like. And there will be the right wing who will object to trans people reading stories to kids or whatever. There will always be an argument which suggests that these people are there to protect children. A load of crap. But nevertheless, will it expand itself into those sorts of animals? Let's wait and see. I think it's an interesting time, and I think all of us should sit back and watch to see how the right wing then respond to having their symbols disseminated, destroyed, and eradicated in this particular way. What do you think? If you've got an idea, put it down below or send me an email message. But please, I would like to think that you could subscribe to my channel for any further notifications. Thanks for being with me, everybody. Take care, look after yourselves, and be safe.